Menopause. Why aren't we talking about this? I'm on a mission that no woman should suffer in silence. I'm on a mission to increase awareness and create a community. I'm on a mission to make this M word mainstream. I'm on the menopause mission. Part of my transition through menopause was that I really had a bit of an identity crisis. And I had to grieve who I was.
Oh, huge. It's a massive part of menopause. So when we're talking about menopause, it's not just like, oh, my body's doing weird things, or I'm getting older, or I'm aging, or any of those things. With those changes, with the hormone changes, but also like your skin changes, and your hair is changing, and your nails are changing, and you're not getting a period anymore. And as funny as that sounds, you think you'd be grateful for that. It was still a piece of our identity prior to. Right? All of a sudden, without all the estrogen and the progesterone, like our hands start to age. All of a sudden we get our mom's hands, right? And they wrinkle different. And
Where's the lotion?
right? There's all these pieces that are...
Now everybody's looking at
I know,
their hands.
right? Totally are. They should be. But there's pieces of that we don't think about. And all of a sudden we don't have the same energy we had. We don't have the same capacity that we had. We don't have the same emotional stability that we had. And we have to grieve. We have to grieve, like transitioning into this like new area of life.
Oh, the joys. All right, here we go.
Cheers to menopause.
So, you are a grief and trauma specialist. Tell us about what that exactly is.
So trauma is any time that your nervous system is jarred. So any time that your life is like going down in one direction, one pathway, and something happens and it's just like hard right or left into something different. So the trauma will register in your body exactly the same as like unrepressed emotions or someone holding a gun to your head or, you know, all of these things will register this trauma in your body. Right? They'll all register it. And so what happens is we hold that in, all those repressed emotions, those protection mechanisms, all of that stuff, they just kind of cuddle inside of you.
Cuddle.
Right? It's a nice way to word it.
Why do we hold our emotions in? What has been, obviously something has been taught. No?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
Is it...
Children are to be seen and not heard. It's suck it up, buttercup. I mean, how many more of these things?
Put on your big girl panties.
The big girl panties.
Right?
Oh, one of my favorites is like, take a shot and man up. One of my family's lines was like, I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah, I've heard
Right?
that too.
But there's now all this research coming out about how we like gaslight kids, even at a young age, where like they fall and hurt themselves. And we're like, no, you're fine, you're not hurt,
It's okay,
you're
okay,
good, you're okay. And it's like, no, you're actually really hurt. Like, you're upset, you're frustrated, you're hurt. Like, that's okay. Now let's process it and move past it. But every single time we hold that in, it traps it. It's almost like think of a storage room of all these little boxes of like every single time you didn't cry or you didn't rage or you didn't laugh or you didn't hold it or you didn't like release those emotions. And now you have like this warehouse of emotions. One of the problems with menopause is that it's like a tornado going through your warehouse.
Oh, I love
So
that.
because your cells are doing all these things and your hormones are doing all of these things, it stirs it all up again.
So the visual I just got, this is amazing. So you have this warehouse with all of these boxes.
Yeah.
These little boxes. And anytime you're triggered, and we'll talk about that word in more detail,
Yep.
but somebody has come and basically opened that box for everything to kind of come out and resurface.
100%.
And what we try and do is we try and take it and shove it back into that box and shut it. But what we need to do is we need to allow it to come out, process it, so that we can recycle that box. We can throw it away.
So I always picture it like, you know, those like weird blow up guys that like fly all over the place. I always picture it like that. Like someone opened your box and one of those shot out and he's like, ow! Like, I'm here to hang out. And you're like, ah!
I'm something you haven't dealt with.
How do you shove that back in the box when there's all that air and limbs and things and you're trying to like get it back in there?
Yeah.
Right? Except for you can't get that one tucked back in that box and sealed before another one opens, and then another one opens, and another one opens. And because your hormones are doing all these things, now you're having to figure out how to process that. So a lot of the work I do with people is on grieving that. But also like, okay, now you open the box, let's take out this blowy man and let's figure out what the heck's actually going on, right? The dancing man.
Yeah.
We all see them everywhere, which is why it's such a funny visual to me. But let's actually heal the trauma piece.
Right.
Right? Like, let's go back and actually heal that so that you can like get rid of the box and empty out some of your warehouse so that if you do have the odd one go off, you're like, oh, that's just funny.
Right.
Not like you're walking into a warehouse of 5,000
boxes
crazy
all opening
boxes.
at once. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think oftentimes the more boxes will come open when you're going through different life transitions, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And menopause is one of those significant life transitions, right? So when working with someone, Dawn, what would be a place that you would start? Where would you begin with processing grief or trauma?
So one of the first things I always look at is we almost do like an infant check. Where it's like based on where you're at, right? Based on where you're at. I have clients that come to me and they're like, no, I'm actually doing okay, but stuff's coming up and I know I need to deal with it and let's go. And it's like, all right, what's gone on in your life? What's happened? Now let's create a plan on how we're going to attack that and we're going to heal that. And I was talking to someone earlier today about the fact that it's often not the trauma that caused the problem. The actual action of the trauma is often not what the problem is. It's what it taught you. It's the beliefs we developed because of it, right? So a lot of people will go to therapy or they'll go to coaches or they'll go to healers, they'll do whatever to heal the trauma, but they haven't actually dealt with the other piece of it.
Which is the belief.
Which is all the beliefs attached to it, which is the identity that's attached to it, right? Where if you're in a situation where the person that was supposed to love you the most hurt you the most, what that taught you is that the more someone loves you, the less safe they are. People don't think of that piece of it. They don't think of that facet of it. So they may have healed the trauma, but they don't know how to cope in a relationship.
Right.
Or friendships or any of those things. So I look at it in a very different way in that light of like, no. This happened, but if we look at it as like a splash zone, right? Like you had this like Shamu whale splash zone, right? It's like, no. You dealt with the actual whale, but now you have to deal with all the wet first 10 rows
Right.
of what that's actually done and what it's actually affected in all these other areas of your life. But if someone comes to me and they're in the depths of the hell of it, because I get that too, where it's like a 911, I'm not coping, I'm full-blown falling apart, right? I had one of my clients from years ago contact me this week, and she's like, I'm having a mental breakdown, help. And that was it. She just was like crying. I'm having a mental breakdown. I don't know how to do this. There's too much going on. And I was like, okay, stop. And I did an infant check. I was like, have you eaten? Have you slept? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Have you had water? Right? Are your clothes comfortable? And she started laughing and realized that like 4 out of the 5 she needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I was like, right now, go to a drive-thru, grab something to eat, try to make it a little bit healthy, not just deep fried garbage and sugar. Right? Sit down in the parking lot, lay your seat back, have a 10-minute, just like close your eyes and breathe, chug a bottle of water, and then call me back.
Yeah, I love that. It's often just sometimes the fundamentals that can help recalibrate the nervous system and allow us to feel safe.
Oh.
I wanted to talk about how we can often react to those that are closest to us, and that happens through the menopause transition. So what you were saying about pushing those away that maybe love you the most or you are closest to because it's triggering that unsafety, right?
So I think there's 2 different ways you can look at it. One is those people are safe. So it's safe to lash out and react at them or yell at them or rage at them or whatever because they are that person in our life, right? We often will go after the people we're closest to. Right? Like a child will come to their parent and lose it because they know the parent's not going to walk away. They know the parent's not going to hate them after it. Right? They can say anything, do anything, cry, be hysterical. And it's like, it's okay. We're going to get through this. I'm still going to love you no matter what. Right? So often we'll react out of that place towards our loved ones. Because it's like, well, you're my person. Welcome to my new reality. And you just get to be in the middle of my tornado.
And
right?
I think oftentimes what I've heard through conversations with women is that it's their partner who gets the brunt of it. And so that's something
always.
that needs to be talked about as well is imagine being the partner suddenly getting all of this storm and not knowing what to do or how to support or how to love on in the way that maybe they used to that worked. And now it's not working.
But then there's this second piece of this is if we have a fear of rejection or we have a fear of abandonment or we have a fear of not being lovable or loved or wanted or needed or any of these things, if these are childhood fears from a place of trauma, then what happens is we're like, hey, wait, I'm changing. What if they don't love me?
That resonates.
Right?
Whew.
So then all of a sudden we're like, I don't want to be rejected, so I'm going to reject you before you can reject me.
Yes.
So I'm going to push you away so that I can be the one doing the hurting and I'm in charge of it and I'm in control of it because that hurts less.
And don't we need something to be in control of when
Always.
During this transition? Well, always. And
Yeah.
especially when everything feels like it's out of control.
Totally.
Which can be very descriptive of the menopause transition for many.
Oh, 100%. But it is like you age different and all of a sudden your body changes and you've gained weight or all of a sudden you have like weird acne or like your body's just doing so many things. Your hormones are out of control. And like, I remember one time looking at my husband, I was just like crying and I was like, just hold me. And I was like, why do you love me? Like, I'm nuts. And he just started laughing and he goes, it's okay. Like, because I love you. Right?
So I have definitely done that with my partner, just feeling like there's so much change, there's so much chaos, and how could this possibly be something that you would want or desire in your life? Like, why would you want this anymore? You know, because I don't even want this. So why would you want this? You know?
Well, and I think when we are not loving ourselves because we don't recognize ourselves and we don't know who we are, and we're like, I don't love this person. I loved the old me. Can I just have her back?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Then it makes us think that they're not going to also love us. But on the other side of this, I think that as women, we really suck at telling our spouse and our partner what's going on.
We're communication queens that don't communicate.
Oh, the worst, because we're all feels. And guys don't know how to do feels in that way, right? Like a guy has like their logic side of their brain and their emotional side of their brain not attached.
Right.
Right? Where a woman, ours are attached.
Yeah, it's like spaghetti.
Oh.
We're spaghetti
And they're
they're
boxes.
compartments, right?
Right? And so we can be like in this hyper psycho emotional state. And like, let's be honest, let's use the word because we're psycho at times. And it's like a guy looking at us is going, how do I fix it? 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 But they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to deal with the emotions. They don't know how to deal with those things. And so one of the best things we can do as the female going through the menopause is be like, okay, hey, we should create code words, right? Let's have code words for when I'm melting emotionally and I do not have the capacity or the capability to handle my life right now. You can look at me and go, you okay? And I can go, melting. And you know in advance what I need.
Banana!
Right? Pineapple! Like we have code words in our house and it's so important.
Yeah. It's so funny, you know, you used to have code words in the bedroom and now you have code words in the kitchen, right?
Oh,
or the bathroom or the garage or everywhere and anywhere where you feel like you're spiraling out of control. So I came to you during this transition and process to do some of this work because all of those things that you talked about were things we talked about in the initial session, in that I just wasn't able to show up in the way that I used to. I didn't have the capacity, I didn't have the drive, the motivation, and I didn't recognize myself. And that was terrifying. And it was also what I felt to be debilitating, because if I can't be this person the way that I've given back to the world, the way that I've presented, then who am I? And what value do I have? So it came back to purpose. And we definitely talked about the basic needs. I love the going back to the basics, the baby checks. But then we dove in a little deeper. So once you do the checks, where do you go with folks on their healing journey from there?
So it's very, very customized per client, right? So some people it's actually going into dealing with whatever trauma happened, right? Whether it was death of a parent, abandonment of a parent, if it was, divorces, if it was sexual trauma, bullying, whatever it was, it's going back to that, because worth isn't a publicly traded commodity. Worth isn't a thing if you think about it, right? It's not a thing that we can go to a store and buy. It's not a thing that we can trade. It doesn't have a value. And yet somehow as a society, we have adopted these things about like, I am worthy. Okay, what does that even mean? Right?
Yeah.
But like my actions equal my worth, and how I show up equals my worth. Okay. And this is now what makes me significant, and now I'm okay. Right? Except that's not how worth works. Right? I remember saying to a friend one day, I was like, you know why I know I'm worthy of being on this planet? Because I was okay, so two people, this might be really hilariously bad to say, but two people randomly managed to bump uglies one day and make a baby. There's only so many times in a month that even works.
Right.
Then if you add in like 30% of those pregnancies end in miscarriage, but then I was also like 1 in 25 million sperm, and I won the race. Like, have like most of Canada run a race and you win. Right? Then you actually make it to like birth. You don't die of SIDS. Like, you weren't aborted, all these things. Like, I made it. I made it to Earth. Like, I actually got here. That made me worthy of being here. Done. That's it. Right? So when we measure ourselves to like, but I'm not enough. Okay, show me the book of measurements for enough. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is people that are like, I am enough.
And we talked about that because it's something that I even have in my fridge and that people talk about all the time.
All the time.
I am enough. But what does that mean? Where's like, what value does enough hold?
Well, not only that, but what does enough mean? Enough is like your average. You're kind of okay. Like, did you clean your house? Say, yeah, I cleaned enough to make it enough. Like, clean enough.
Right.
I ate enough. Think about it. It's actually like the most pathetic word. In like the funniest way. Like, it's actually a really sad word. And you're like, I am enough. And it's like, is that really what you want to be calling yourself? That's like saying I'm less than okay.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like the companies that say above average, whatever, right?
Right? And you're like, congratulations.
When in reality, we are all actually miracles to even be here in this space of time for however long that looks like.
Right?
And so wouldn't it be amazing if we just went around and said, I am miraculous? How much more power does that have?
Oh, so much more.
I am enough. I am miraculous.
I think we should just stop. We need to all stop saying I am enough.
Yeah.
To all the people that got that tattooed on your bodies, please cross it off and be like, outstanding. You're not enough. You're actually outstanding. Right? But so when a client shows up, it's really digging into like, okay, what has happened to even cause it in the first place? It can be anything from genetics, right? If you come from like an Eastern European background, it can be very, very tied to like your actions equal your worth. Right? So like, right? So like you have to be busy enough and you have to have enough kids and you have to garden and sew and did and da 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 da. And that comes from like this generational thing that's not even present and current. Right? But that is then trained in us by our parents. Right? If there's a sexual trauma and now your hormones are doing crazy things and you don't find yourself attractive anymore, or your sex drive has changed, or any of those things are changed, then we deal with that.
Right.
Right? If it's grieving, if we need to actually like hold a fake funeral and grieve parts of what was, parts of what should have been, parts of what we're missing, that's okay. We can do that. Right? So I will step in right from, I mean, you experienced it. Like, I will literally show up at your house with like supplements. I'm going to book you an IV appointment. I'm going to get you into a doctor. We're going to get you testing. Let's do the things. But now I'm going to also make you dinner, and we're going to organize your space, and we're going to like, what do we need to do to get you there? And I think, I mean, I am super unconventional in that way, is I will full on, like, I will show up at your house and clean. And organize things. If that's what you need, right? Like if that's what you need to get you through this phase.
Right.
This time in your life.
something that you do as well, I felt, is just allowing to feel the feels, right?
Yeah.
And so definitely through my lived experience of menopause and from what I've heard from other women is that there is this rage, there's this anger, and anger that I haven't experienced since I was a teenager, which we know is we're going through the opposite of hormone shifts
again.
So the rage, it comes in, and it's, for me, those were my hot flashes. It wasn't necessarily the physiological sweating and takeover in that way, although I did experience some of those as well, but it was more so the emotional hot flash, right? So you work with clients to feel the feels. In fact, you have something called a rage room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what is that experience like?
Well, we block, right? We block everything. And it's all protection mechanisms. Like at some point in our lives, we have been taught that those emotions aren't safe. We've been taught we're not allowed to show that big of emotion, right? Like just tone it down. Tone it down. I used to always say, like, they need to bring in tackle football in the high schools, not meditation. Right? Like, they need to have people, like, actually feeling that and allowing some of those emotions to come out. But we're so taught to just, like, I'm just gonna have another moment of gratitude as I'm, like, vibrating and wanting to murder somebody. Like, you notice that as these things are coming in, mental health is actually getting worse. Kids are more depressed than ever. They're more anxious than ever. They're more all of these things than ever. But, don't worry, because they're safe on a playground because it's all foam blocks. They're not falling, right?
So,
like, we're not taught how to actually release emotions and feel things anymore. We don't know how to fail. We don't know how to fall. We don't know how to fight for anything. We're never told no. Like, this is our society. This is literally what we're developing. And now we're growing up and we're like, gee, what's wrong? And it's like, when's the last time you felt a feel?
perseverance, grit, tenacity.
None of it.
Getting through.
None of it.
Allowing things to be hard. And
What?
then
No,
but
we can't let it
still
be hard.
going on.
Yeah.
And those are things that create resilience. And I think that you're right. This is a really touchy subject in regards to the mental health movement, which is absolutely so important, and the awareness around all of this. And I think that there's detriments, just like anything that comes, such as toxic positivity or
Drives me insane.
yeah, just not trying things or taking the risks or doing the hard stuff, because that is almost sometimes used as a bit of a shield.
So with clients, everything from I've gone to rage rooms, like actual like smash glass with sledgehammer style. I've taken bats out into the forest and beat up dead fallen trees. We've stomped and screamed and yelled. We've taken bats to pillows. Like, we do all kinds of stuff because so often our voices are trapped. Right? Like, we've shut up so many times, our voice is so trapped. And now it's all erupting, and now we're having all these big feels, and now we're having all these emotions. And so if you picture it like a bucket, right? Like, if it's full up to the top and something happens, guess what's going to happen? It's going to splash everywhere.
Shamu!
Right? You totally have your like SeaWorld moment there. Right? Like, it's now going to splash everywhere, and now you're causing damage to the people around you. So sometimes you actually have to like release, you have to empty your bucket. And no amount of Netflix is going to empty your bucket.
Right.
No amount of bottles of wine are going to empty your bucket. You cannot smoke enough pot to empty your bucket.
Right.
Like, you actually have to feel your feels and feel the emotions. So what's interesting is often when somebody will rage, or I'll finally get them to the point where they can scream or they can cry or they can finally start to release that, they feel this like huge burst of excitement and happy after.
And that's, I feel, when there's space for gratitude.
Oh, totally.
Because when
it's
you're
not
on the other
fake.
side of that expression,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. It's not fake. So you're not just throwing the blanket over top of all of the stuff that's still going to exist under there.
Oh, it's still there.
But if you allow yourself to feel the feels, then what is on the other side of release is capacity and room to enjoy this beautiful, amazing thing called life. There's beauty in menopause as well.
Oh,
there is
100%
a
there is.
lot of things to come,
Yeah.
right? This maturity, this graduation into
No periods.
elderdom. That is one of the great things.
That was my favorite.
So yes, you have been through the transition as well. So tell us about what that was like for you.
Many times.
Right.
So I have an interesting story because I went through puberty super young. Like I was like 9, 10 when I went through it the first time.
Wow.
And I know I say I went through it the first time, like I've been through it a lot, but I have.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also had a brain aneurysm when I was 17, almost 18, that like rocked all my hormones again.
Mm-hmm.
And they said based on what my body went through, it went through puberty all over again. So like I went through it, and then like 9 years later, I'm like, here I am again, going through this again. And I remember feeling like I was nuts. Like I was like giggly and flirty and weird and awkward, and my hormones are doing things, and I'm having acne again. And I did not know how to handle it. I also like regrew my whole body again. Like I regrew my chest and my breasts, and I regrew my body, and I doubled in size, and my hair color changed, and eye color and skin color, and like everything changed at 18.
Yeah.
So then at 34, I have to have an emergency hysterectomy. So I'd fought for it for a long time. I was dying. I desperately needed it. It was like, it had to happen.
Yeah.
But they ended up having to take out my ovaries. And so like, I've already done this change enough times, and now they take out my ovaries, and within 48 hours, I'm having hot flashes and night sweats. Like 48 hours.
Yeah.
And then everything changes again. Everything changes again. So I didn't realize some of the things that I didn't realize, because my mom passed away when I was 28 and I was 34 going through this. So I didn't ever have anyone to talk to about it.
Yeah. We have that in common.
Right? Like we didn't have moms, so we could be like, hey, so what did you go through? Is that anything similar? And I didn't have that relationship with, you know, my mother-in-law or my aunties or anyone that were like, I didn't have those people in my world where I could be like, hey, can we have some really vulnerable conversations about this?
Yep.
Right? And so I'm going through this and trying to Google stuff, but I'm 34 and I'm like, I'm literally going through menopause at the same time as my mother-in-law, as my aunts, like, and I'm just trying to be quiet about it. But I didn't know that like hot flashes come out of your body in different places. So I was like, all my hot flashes are coming out right here. And I'm like on fire under my clothes, but you couldn't see it on my face. Right? Where somebody else would have their hot flashes just from the neck up, where someone else is like all abdomen or all legs. Like every single person is different in how they have menopause. Right?
Yes, it's all a unique lived experience.
The night sweats, the what works, what doesn't work. Like hormone replacement therapy didn't work for me. So I've actually just not had hormones for a long time. Right? So I had to go very natural in how I dealt with it because I couldn't, right? I tried everything, but now it's like, oh man, if I have a single drop of alcohol, I have a hot flash. If I have like, I could have like one glass of wine, I am night sweats for like a full day. So like alcohol and me are not friends.
Yeah.
Right? So I've just had, and I've never been a drinker, but I've just cut it out 100% because I'm like, I just don't want to feel that way. Right? But I also have to eat super clean, and I have to work out, and I have to do all these things. I have to layer clothes different.
Yes.
Because you never know. Like, I'll never forget, and this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to tell it. I was at a meeting with this like exec of a massive global company. He had flown into Edmonton to meet me for this meeting, and I'm sitting in this like very swanky restaurant, and I had like a scarf on because it's winter, and you know my businessy clothes, and I started having the world's worst hot flash, and it was in the first year, and I did not know how to manage it.
Right.
And so I'm like trying to breathe through it, and I'm like panicking. So I try to take my scarf off, and I'm fumbling with it, and all of a sudden it flew out and slapped this man across the face as I'm yanking it off my body. And I'm like, sorry. And I'm talking it, and I'm like, I'm never going to get the contract. This is not good. And I'm like, I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience. but the hot flash isn't stopping. And I'm like, I'm going to sweat through my clothes. Like, this is embarrassing. So I took a glass of water and I took this massive drink and I got a mouth of ice. And then I patted my mouth with my napkin, put the ice on the napkin, put it on my lap and dropped it on the floor. Took my shoes and socks off under the table and was rubbing my feet on ice cubes to try to cool down. So I calm myself, meeting ends, goes fine. Well, then they're like, oh, we're going to walk you to your car. And I'm like, just a sec. I just have to take a quick call. I'll meet you guys at the front. No, I had like my socks and my shoes off, but they're all sopping wet from all the ice I've been dumping on the floor. Like, I did this like a million times through the meeting. And I'm like awkwardly trying to put myself back together to walk out. But like, those things happen in early menopause.
Well, and they can happen.
And we don't even realize. Like,
Yeah.
we don't even realize these are things. And I wish that, like, more people were telling embarrassing stories of what happens.
This is what I think women are going through, is that suffering in silence and that not saying anything and not telling the embarrassing moments or sharing the stories. And I mean, frankly,
I'll
that's
tell them all.
the whole purpose of the project.
So many.
So isn't it great that we have resources available? Imagine what it was like for our moms and moms to go through, where they couldn't Google or research.
Yeah.
And even though that's limited, we're now seeing more and more starting to come out, and we're breaking the silence because we're going through this and not knowing what is going on. Something that you alluded to in regards to what you're eating and what you're doing and not drinking alcohol and responding proactively in a way to what your body needs is radical self-care. So we talk about self-care,
Yeah.
but you talk about radical self-care. How does it differ?
So self-care is often when people talk about, when they talk about like going to the spa or going to the salon or, you know, taking a day off work or like Netflix or a glass of wine or, you know, this is my self-care. Like, I'm going to wash my face today kind of idea. And radical self-care is no. How am I going to actually set myself up for success? And it might have nothing to do with my physical body.
Right.
It might have nothing to do with my time, right? For me, radical self-care is, what are the moments in my day that cause me the irritation that causes me to get angry? Mm-hmm. What are the things my brain can't do anymore? Mm-hmm. Right?
And that has to do with that capacity and that change in us.
100%.
So the ability, or rather inability, to take on as much and listening and responding to those things.
The inability to cope, right? Like, where something in the past would have been not a big deal and you would have just laughed it off and it would have been fine. And now it's like the end of the world sometimes. And so one of the things I often look at even with clients is like, no, what are your pain points throughout your day or throughout your week? So I have weird things that I do in my very, very like oddly structured world. Because my world is very unstructured, but I have these like weird things I do. And I know, like, you and I have talked about a lot of them. Like, I fuel up my car every single Sunday, no matter what. It does not matter if I'm like 3/4 of a tank or if I'm 1/4 of a tank, it gets fueled up every Sunday. Because I don't want to have the brain space to think about it all week as I'm going to and from meetings and in and out of my house and out for groceries and doing all those things, to try to find the time in there to do it or remember or even glance at it and look.
Yeah.
Because that used to be a very normal thing for me to notice, and now I don't. Now I'm like, oh, my tank's on empty, what? And I have like 50 kilometers to drive. Right. And I'm like, oops.
Stressed.
And now I'm praying that the fumes will get me there. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm doing this.
How far can I leave it for it to go over into the E? Oh yeah, I still got time.
Right? Like when the numbers stop and it's just the line and you're like, oh, this is bad. And I'm still like 20K from home and I still don't have time to fuel up. Right? But like, how many times do we do that? And then the next morning we wake up because we still haven't fixed the problem. And now it's just added stress, and now we're trying to figure it out. And it comes back to that capacity of giving ourselves grace.
Right.
Of giving ourselves so much compassion and grace to be like, you know what? This is just not an issue I want to deal with anymore. So Sundays,
setting yourself up for success. So setting yourself up for success.
100%. Little things like at the end of the day, I'm more tired than I used to be. So I realized that one of my stressors was having to clean my kitchen every night drove me insane. So now I have this habit. I have a pattern that when I get up in the morning and I'm making my coffee, in the time it takes for the water to boil, I can unload my dishwasher. Right? In the time it takes for my coffee to brew, I can reload anything that might still be there from the night before if I didn't get it done. But I run my dishwasher every single night before bed. It is the very last thing I do before I shut off lights and go upstairs. And it doesn't matter if there's 10 things in it or if it's full. It has nothing to do with anything except it's setting me up for success the next day.
Right.
I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. There's always going to be clean dishes, right? I wash my beddings every Sunday, or more if the hot flashes are there, right? But like, I now have all these habits, these routines that I've put in place that calm me, right? Instead of being frustrated every Friday at the end of the day because I'm exhausted and I'm not coping anymore and I'm done and my week is done and I just want it to be over. And now I have to make dinner. I don't. I always either have a freezer meal or I eat out on Friday night. And instead of judging myself for it, I just worked it into my budget and then give myself grace. Right? Yep. And part of it is just like, no. How can I love on myself just a little bit more right now? So I need that.
My understanding when you described radical self-care is also making the decisions for yourself that aren't necessarily leaning into bad habits or what feels good in the moment, but would rather be a decision made for kind of the bigger picture. So setting yourself up in a structure or choosing to take that walk even though you're super tired. And sometimes the radical self-care decisions are...
They're hard.
Hard. Yeah.
I do a lot of IV therapy. So for me, I due to other health issues as well, but also with the menopause stuff, it's one of the few things that actually keeps everything under control. So I have massive needle trauma, and I still go for an IV at least once a month and often more. And I just take that 3 hours out of my schedule and I go and I do it and I budget for it and it's a thing. And I don't miss. Like, that is a non-negotiable in my life, right? But I also now know, like, sometimes I have to say no. And sometimes I can't go out that night, or I can't go to one more networking event, or I can't see one more client, or I can't fill in the blank, right? It's giving myself permission. It's giving tomorrow me a good day, right? It's like, will tomorrow me be really happy I made this decision today? How's this going to affect future me? Right?
And I think when you do that, you set yourself up in a support structure that you can still show up. You can still show up
absolutely.
Then. You can still be providing value and fill your own bucket and be able to thrive and be able to just be. Because you're not in that state of overwhelm all the time, right? Where you're just constantly triggered and all of the boxes are just flying open, right?
Well, and often, like, if we really think about it, overwhelm is because we put too much on our plates. Overwhelm isn't from somebody else. It's from us. Right? And it's based on our expectations that we put on ourselves. And so really what we have to do is, like, step back, look at those expectations, and either lower them drastically or, like, full on white those bad boys out. Like, just get rid of them. Right? It's so important to give ourselves that grace and to stop judging ourselves. Right? There's times where I'm just like, no, I'm not cooking. I'm going to cook twice a week. That's it. That's all I'm going to do because that's what I can handle. Because cooking is stressing me out. Cool. I can make enough on Sunday night to last till Friday. Friday I eat out. I can cook again Saturday or Sunday, right? And I thrive on that. I personally thrive on that. And then all of a sudden I'll go through a cooking phase again where I'm cooking every single day and it's unique and amazing and fabulous and everyone around me is like, yay, she's cooking. And then I'm out again.
Well, because you don't resent it then, right? Just like anything. So I rely on one of those meal prep things.
But hear what you just said. You don't resent it then.
Yeah. You get to enjoy it. You're in it and enjoying it if you set up structures around things that are successful for where you're at with your capacity. So then let's take it back to menopause and apply that in what you grieve and how you change. You know, you're not going to be able to do and be what you were in your 20s, what you were in your 30s, right? Yeah, and it is amazing when one comes to accept it and then sets up those structures. Well, I guess process the emotion in and around that, because I think that there's a lot of emotion to be released, to be processed, and there's just a lot of letting go, I think. And that is what menopause is in essence, is there's lots of stuff that comes up from your past. There's lots of stuff that you think that you've dealt with, and all of a sudden that box comes open and it's like there in the corner of the warehouse. You didn't even know it was still there. Oh yeah. But if we're, but the releasing it and processing of it allows to be on that other side of just being so grateful that we've gotten here in this miraculous thing called life. We have got to get here. We got the gift that so many before us have not. And our moms even, you know, my mom was 48 years old. She went through early menopause as well. So she had gotten there, but didn't get to live and experience so many things that we get to in this elderdom, in this new place in life, right?
There's also, and my mom was 52, right? Like our moms were so young. And one thing I love is that often women that have gone through menopause, they've dealt with the emotional aspect of it, they've done the grief, they've done the work, they've done all those things. You come out the other side not caring so much. Do you know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden, like, your hair doesn't matter as much and your looks don't quite matter as much. And you're just like, what actually matters? What do I want to experience in life? What do I desire in life? Who's important to me in life? Because so much of it prior, like if you look back at your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, right? All of these times, so much of it is like, look at me, look what I'm doing. And there's like, if you have kids, then you have like kids needing you in a big way. And you're a mom and you're a parent and you're a this and you're a that and you're a business owner, you're an employee. Like there's all these things that are taking your identity. And so many of those are kind of falling off in different ways at the same time as like we're shedding this piece of who we were. And I don't know, to me, it feels like you get to like step into this whole new world.
Yeah. I think that just to build on that, you get to choose what matters to you. So if getting dressed up and, you know, you see the 80-year-old women walking and they're all, you get to choose. You get to choose if you want to spend money on skin treatments and get the procedures. It's that you don't care about what other people think as much and you're not doing it for them. I think that is the bigger picture, is that the things that fall or shed away are more of the things that you were doing because they mattered
to everyone else.
Whereas when we step into this and you're on the other side, it's like, no, I want to do those things, but I want to do them for me. Cheers to early menopause. Are we actually saying that?
Cheers to early menopause.
There we go. Cheers to life's transitions and getting to enjoy them in whatever way we can.
But also embracing what comes with it, the healing that comes with it, the peace that can come with it. And, you know, I'm never going to say it's easy to dig through your crap. It isn't, right? But sometimes you just got to get in the ring. And honestly, like, I've done this for a lot of years. Most people are like, that was actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And it's so good on the other side.